Maximize performance with dashboards, brought to you by CFO on Demand from Fitzpatrick, Bongiovanni, and Kelly CPAs. Support our sponsors. This month's sponsor is Merrill Lynch, Altor, Oakley Group. I will be your presenter. My name is Lou Bongiovanni from CFO on Demand, and welcome. If you have any emails or questions, please send them to me after presentation. I'll be glad to answer them by email or phone call. This month's webinar objectives. The types of performance metrics that you find on dashboards. We'll talk about the advantages to using a dashboard. And lastly, 7 ways to improve your dashboards. Let's start off by looking at a sample of what a typical dashboard is. Now, there are all different types there, so this is an example of just one of them. As you see here, it has many sections. There's graphs, there's charts, there's ratios and tables. This would be an example of one of a high-end person who has many things that they're gauging. As you have lower-level staff, their dashboards tend to get simpler. Here's another example of maybe a more simplified version of a dashboard. Maybe this is a lower level staff where they're not looking at or monitoring so much. Incidentally, on this one, you see on the bottom right, there are pivot table options, so you can filter this particular one rather easily to monitor whatever indicator they have here. So incorporating pivot tables are important, and we'll get into that in a minute as well. So we'll be talking about dashboards, and these are the type of dashboards that I envision and that I'll be speaking of. Next, dashboard format. What is typically in a dashboard? I just showed you a sampling of it, but here I have a more comprehensive list. So you'll typically find graphs, whether it's a line graph, a bar graph, a pie graph, all different types of graphs now with the use of different software. You can pretty much have any type of graph that pleases you. There'll also be tables. I just mentioned pivot tables are good for horizontal or vertical trend analysis. They're usually very helpful. You'll also find charts. Many of them contain ratios with benchmarks and such. And then lastly, what's rather popular is trying to simulate the look of an actual dashboard in a car. You'll see dials and barometers. They'll use various colors, green if you're on mark, yellow if it's marginal, and red if you're outside the targeted desired area. So dashboards can be as creative as you like, and they come in all different flavors these days. So that's the format. How about the content of it? What's in there? What are we usually monitoring in dashboards? Well, the 3 main areas that I find are popular to be monitored in dashboards are sales, profitability, and cash flow. Now, in sales, they're not just talking about dollar amounts this month versus last month or this week versus last week. They'll also talk about in units, in different divisions of sales, breaking it out. So it can be as detailed as you want. I will warn you not to try to get too detailed on dashboards because you don't want to get too bogged down in it. I would just pick some key areas there to really focus on. Same with profitability. You'll see profitability in the context of dollars or percentages. It's important that you have benchmarks or targets there so you know if you're on track with those particular indicators. And lastly, cash flow or liquidity. There'll be a number of ratios that you will see, whether they're on a monthly or quarterly or annual basis. There'll be ratios comparing it to certain benchmarks or using certain multiples. So they're the 3 areas of focus that you typically see. It's not to mention that you can't have other ones, but they're the ones that are most popular. So what are the advantages to having dashboards? Dashboards have become rather popular with CEOs and CFOs. And what exactly are they using it for, and why has it become so popular? Well, the advantages of dashboards is that it's a good communication tool. It's a way of communicating management or your supervisor's expectations of performance. It allows you to see in a very quick, quantifiable way what's expected in a particular area or task. It allows for interaction between the employee and the supervisor. Next, it can serve as an evaluation tool. It provides a clear, measurable benchmark. Again, very easy to say either you've hit it or you haven't. It also allows for discussion if you're just below that benchmark, what it takes to get to benchmark. It allows for open discussion with the employer and the employee. A couple of other advantages to dashboards. It gives you quick feedback. Most financials take a week, if not longer, to generate after the month end. Dashboards should be instantaneous or only take a day or so. It's very important that they're quick in putting them together and you get the feedback immediately. Also, the benefits of dashboards is it's objective. You're not putting any subjectivity in there. Now, there's empirical data that it's working with, so can that be influenced a little bit depending on what you're looking at? Absolutely. So I won't say it's completely objective, but for the most part it is. It also allows you to look at outside indicators. You're not only measuring against yourself. Effective dashboards also look at outside indicators to be helpful. Next, I want to talk about the concept of story framing versus storytelling. There was a very good article in Forbes magazine that highlighted this, and I thought this was an interesting way of explaining or understanding the use of dashboards in when you compare it to the other financial information you might have in a company. So you have they use the distinction of story framing versus storytelling, and most people know about storytelling. That's where you're seeing trends and you're coming to conclusions in order to inspire action. But before that, there's a story framing. That is the gathering of information using metrics and having it very linear in its presentation. And that's really where dashboards lie. They're more in the story framing. They're actually in the story framing, which then leads to storytelling and then to action there. So the story framing is you're getting the information. It's either on mark or not. It's quick. It's very measurable. And based on that, you then lead to conclusions. Here's another graphic that I think helps out. You start with data. You do the information or the story framing. You see graphs there. That's where dashboards sit with KPI in them. And then from that, you develop insights and you're seeing patterns and trends. And based on those insights, you take action. So it's important that you understand that you shouldn't go from data to story framing to action. It really needs to have that other step as far as storytelling, and that's where it's a more longer-term analysis. It's not just looking at a couple of weeks or a couple of months and drawing conclusions. There, you want to really take a longer view of the information that you're getting in dashboards before making any important or long-term decisions. Dashboards is a good perspective to help gain some information, but it's not the only one, especially when you're influencing policy or planning in a company. You want to use dashboards, but that isn't in place of financial statements. And that is, it's important that the two work in conjunction with each other. Next, let's talk about the 7 ways to improve your dashboards. All right. Number 1, you want to leverage technology. Dashboards have become very popular, and the cost of generating dashboards have been driven down. Many dashboards can be found as cloud-based tools. Domo is an example of one in which it's very popular. It's cloud-based. You can not only populate your own company information, it'll bring in industry benchmarks to use as a point of comparison as well. Artificial intelligence has entered this form as well with dashboards. It's become more cost effective, obviously more automated. There's more and more software there that you can find on the internet that can help generate customized dashboards for you. The important thing is to shop around, find the right one for you, and then move forward making it as automated as possible. And in most cases, I recommend having one that allows you to have external industry benchmarks come into play too. So the more automated it is, the more streamlined, and again, the cloud-based ones have become more and more popular. That's where I suggest that you should go. All right. Number two, if you don't have any dashboards and you're really just starting out in this realm, my advice is start simple and build on it. Many of the clients who we work with don't take the leap and look for a preformed dashboard. Many of them just start out with Excel, and then they incorporate their accounting system. Many of them use QuickBooks, and they incorporate some items from their point of sale system, whatever that may be. And then they combine the two, and then they start creating their own dashboards in the beginning. If they find that that's taking too much time, or they've kind of outgrown that, then they'll go more to the canned ones that you get that you can then populate. But a good place to start, I found, is using something as simple as Excel and then building your own. The hardest part is getting it established and doing an initial version. Let that process grow. That will take 3 to 6 months to get just the right dashboard. It might be lesser, but that's what we found. It takes about that long to get the right items that you want to monitor. In the process, don't be afraid to get feedback from the end user, obviously from the supervisor of that person. You as the owner also want to inject certain things there. So it should be a collaboration of what's really important, and you might be adding and subtracting things along the way. But keep it dynamic as well. Just because you've been monitoring a certain thing for a number of months or years doesn't mean that you have to continue monitoring just those things. You know, businesses, especially in this day and age, change pretty rapidly, and as a result of it, so should your dashboard. So don't be locked into just monitoring what you've monitored in the past. Other factors might come into play that should be incorporated in your dashboard, so make it dynamic. Visibly appealing. Just like anything else that you use from a presentation standpoint, you want to take your audience into consideration. So you want to make it as appealing to your audience as possible. So this is where I would suggest soliciting information and feedback from the end user. If the end user prefers to see something in a graphic format or a table or ratios, and you have the ability to give them options with that, please do so, because the end user is the one who really needs to feel that this is theirs and needs to be motivated to act from it. So you want to use colors to help it pop, whether it's red, yellow, green, or whatever color combination you like. I think that's useful. And I would use just the adage or the concept that you eat with your eyes. When you go to a restaurant or you look up a place to eat on your cell phone, there's usually very nice pictures of the food. The presentation is especially important in motivating whether someone eats at a restaurant maybe that they've never been to, or picks a dish that they haven't eaten before. So you really get the first appeal with your eyes, and it's no different with dashboards. You want to make it visibly appealing so that it motivates action and people want to look at it as often as you want them to. So make it visibly appealing. And this is tough for accounts because usually we're used to seeing tables and charts, and we don't need that fluff or window dressing, if you will, to gather what we will. But if you're dealing with people, let's say in sales, they want to see this. If you're dealing with certain operational people or customer service people, they want to see things in different formats. That's just the way that they're built. That's taken into consideration the end user, not necessarily the ones who generate it. Item number 4 is don't hide behind the dashboard. And I've seen this in the process where dashboards are a great management tool to measure performance of individuals. Management sometimes falls into the trap of using dashboards as a crutch to help them manage their company or their employees, and that becomes problematic. Just like you wouldn't say, okay, I have a great PowerPoint presentation, so now the PowerPoint's going to carry the presentation. Well, the PowerPoint is a tool to help with the presentation. It's not the presentation itself. By the same token, the dashboard is a tool. It gives very measurable metrics to look at, but then that's the starting point for management and the employees to work. It's not the end all. And I've seen that, unfortunately, in this these times where time is of the essence, or you're not necessarily eye to eye with an employee because they're working remotely or they're on the road a lot. It's very easy to just send out a dashboard, type up some comments, and boom, it's done. I would hesitate doing that on a regular basis. Usually you'll get much more out of it if there's more digging, and that could really enhance the performance of the employee by using the dashboard as a starting point and not the end all. So be mindful of that trap and not falling into it. Number 5, update dashboards frequently. Now, when you're establishing these dashboards, it's important to understand how frequently you want the particular end user to look at it. Some can be weekly if, let's say, it's a restaurant one, or it's a very condensed seasonal business and you want to look at things weekly. Some items you might want to only monitor monthly or quarterly. It really depends on the nature of the dashboard. So you can have dashboards that all aspects of it aren't updated every whatever week or month or so. You need to establish that up front and make sure that is all as automated as can be for you. At the beginnings, I've seen management or ownership spend way too much time in populating these dashboards. Once they're established, the real benefit of a dashboard as opposed to financial statements is that it should be done instantaneously. You know, obviously we were talking about using technology. If it can be downloaded immediately, that is ideal. But in some instances, you need to manually pull it from one source or another. So you want to make sure that that process is streamlined as best you can. And don't hesitate delegating that part of the process. If you as the owner need to spend a little time to gather information to create these dashboards, that is an absolutely fine thing to delegate to an administrative person or a lower level person to get the dashboard together. It doesn't mean that you can't look at it, but you really do not have to be the author of it, especially if it's not completely automated. Don't be afraid to delegate that task because chances are it'll be issued more consistently if you do delegate that task. Number 6, you want to customize by management level. I kind of alluded to this when I showed you the samples of it. Different levels of management or ownership require different dashboards. The lower the level of management or employees who are doing the tasks usually require less dashboards. You're only doing 4 at the max is what I've seen. You don't want to bog them down with a bunch of indicators. They're there on the front lines doing their thing. They just need a handful of different things to focus on, whether you're at the register and you know that the average sales are $21. That's a good indicator to have in your head. So as you're waiting on customers and you're seeing those sales either drop maybe below that maybe you're not upselling them the way you should. Same with restaurants. If you're dealing with wait servers and they know the average ticket is $15 and yours is historically low, you want to find out, am I really pushing the appetizers and the desserts the way I should, for example? So it's those kind of indicators that level of staff that are usually in the front line should know. As far as the level of management, their indicators will be more expanded. So instead of having just 4, they might have anywhere from 5 to, let's say, 6 or 7. There to have more. They're looking at more dials as they're trying to manage the company. Some might be specific to departments, and some might be more company-wide. So those dashboards will look different for sure, and that's absolutely fine. And then when ownership, there tends to be 10 to 12 different items that they're looking at. Again, we're not digging deep, but it's a good indicator of how things are progressing. They will not, they'll have a much broader dashboard and be able to look at it, but that's usually incorporates the lower level dashboards all rolled up to theirs and then adding some additional ones. So make sure you customize it to the level. We already talked about frequency. That's important too. And that's where it takes that 3 to 6 months to get this thing working. You don't just guess right on the first one. You need to really make it customized to your company, because one size really doesn't fit all for this company. You have to look at the uniqueness of management and how much they want to dig with information, and obviously the different tiers there as well, to see how much information they need and can absorb and act on. You don't want to just get bogged down and have a big dashboard just for the sake of having it. That's where the downfall of getting these things off the shelf, dashboards off the shelf, it might just be too much there. They want to justify, the software producers want to justify the fee, so they have a lot of menus. If you can customize it and eliminate things, then it's worthwhile, but you just don't want a packed page for everybody. It really makes it hard to decipher what's important and what isn't. And item 7, ultimately, dashboards can be used to impact a company culture, policy, and planning. Now, that's not its primary focus. Its primary focus is to give immediate feedback to make sure that tasks or processes are being done as desired, and trying to find something measurable to determine that. But ultimately, your culture, the policies of the company, and planning should be consistent with those dashboards ultimately. And if they're not, then that's a problem. So if your dashboards are motivating employees to, let's say, sell a particular product or service based on volume, that's the dashboard. But your company culture is more focused on the quality of the service there, and not so much how many units you're selling or how much time you're selling, then there's a disconnect between the two. So you want to make sure that the dashboards and your company culture, which ultimately rolls up into your financial statements, are all in sync. Because if they're not, then it's very easy to have dashboards directing an employee to act in a way that's inconsistent with your culture, which will jeopardize that employee's role in your company and ultimately that employee's job. So you want to make sure that the dashboards don't sabotage or poison a potential good employee, because of the relationship that you have is distorted by the use of dashboards. So this can be a very powerful tool, but there has to be an established trust in dashboards. So you need to trust that you're using the right ones and it makes sense for that particular employee before you start measuring their performance and ultimately influencing the culture of the company. So in summary, 7 ways to improve your dashboards. One is you want to leverage technology. You want to use the power of artificial intelligence. You want to use cloud-based programs, ideally, ultimately to move into the arena of established dashboards. That's where all the companies are going, and that will just continue to get more cost-effective and more automated over time. If you haven't started on it, I suggest starting simple and build maybe something as simple as an Excel spreadsheet, and then manually putting in there, and ultimately getting to something more automated or sophisticated is usually what I find works well. You want to make it visibly appealing. You want to make sure that the end user's desire and how they like seeing things are kept in mind. So using colors and different types of graphs and charts is always very helpful. You don't want to hide behind the dashboard. Management uses dashboards as tools. It's not the end all. Management still needs to communicate and motivate their employees accordingly. So dashboards are just a tool and not the only tool. You want to update it frequently. You would determine, dependent on what you're monitoring, how frequently it should be updated, and make sure that you are updating it with that frequency and you're giving it to them. You're giving them dashboards sporadically, that really is difficult to work on and to use as a good management tool. So you want to make sure that you are consistent with that. And you want to customize it by management level. Again, whatever tier of management you have, the lower tiers should get less complicated or less voluminous dashboards. And as you work up, you'll get dashboards that have more indicators. And lastly, ultimately, dashboards should be consistent with your policy and planning and your company culture. And if that's not the case, you want to make sure that they're more properly aligned. Or on the flip side, if you're going to change your company culture or looking to do so, you want to make sure that your dashboards are consistent with that change and it's financially rewarding for you. At CFO On Demand, we know a lot about dashboards and work with our clients on dashboards. That is part of the financial services and the financial analysis we provide as outsourced CFOs. If you see the diagram on the left, what we find is business owners get sucked back into the company and become just operators as they're dealing with things such as dashboards and financial statements and analyzing the information in order to make very important decisions. At CFO On Demand, we reinforce that financial analysis part, including dashboards, and we help business owners make more timely and accurate business decisions, and they become business strategists. They evolve from just business operators putting out fires to business strategists. And what we found historically, no matter what size the company, that a business strategist beats a business operator every time in the financial arena here in the competition with small companies. So we definitely want to support being a business strategist. Here are some of our upcoming webinars. You have the next one, July 11th. That's automating your monthly books close. We'll talk about closing the books and how to do that quickly, more automated, so you don't have to wait as long to get important financial statements. I will make that as interesting as possible. I know that's a dry but yet necessary topic. And then after that, we'll talk about succession planning. We've gotten a lot of calls and a lot of issues with that as people are looking to transition into other phases of their lives. And then you see the other ones there that we invite you to attend and watch. We always appreciate your input. And now a word from this month's sponsor, from Merrill Lynch.
Good morning. My name is Ralph Attor, and I'm with Merrill Lynch. My team offers full-service wealth management and are the premier advisors for retirement plans in the southern New Jersey market. We know you have a lot on your plate, and retirement planning might not be on the top of your to-do list. My team handles customized retirement plans from initial startup to ongoing reviews and maintenance. We work in conjunction with your CPA to ensure you, the owner, receive the most beneficial plan the law allows. Let us help you reduce your stress. Have a retirement plan already? We offer a complimentary benchmarking report on your current plan for pricing, quality, and design. Don't have a plan in place? We can review the various retirement plan options to determine the best fit for your needs. Thank you. We can be reached at our contact information below by phone or email. We look forward to working with you.